Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Pre-Market Pulse on the 4th of July, 2025. Overnight, we had US payrolls numbers and obviously President Trump weighing in on a number of issues. But it looks like equity markets, everything is positive at the moment. Doesn't matter what it is, that investors or fund managers are finding a way to spin it in a positive manner. So, as per usual, just probably don't fight the momentum at this stage, despite there being, as you can see here, an absolute stack of red flags going on at the moment. But when momentum is like this, it is usually a fairly large mistake to be, to be fighting it too much. So, global equity indices, basically, we've had the Nikkei and the Hang Seng fall back a bit, but they were very, very strong last week. We had the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, and Russell up around about 1%, as I said, on the back of that, on the back of those US jobs numbers. Now, the non-farm payrolls, or the US employment numbers, added 147,000 jobs. So they're expecting about 111,000. It was all gains in state government and healthcare, offsetting the declines in the federal workforce. So still not from the private sector. For me, it's really not I don't think it's necessarily a massive positive. And all it does essentially is put rate cuts in doubt, because obviously what President Trump's calling for in terms of rates dropping an enormous amount, particularly in the long end, 2% or more, you would really need the economy to be clearly softening. And with the up 150,000, it's clearly not softening. So we have a situation where, while inflation's come down a little bit, tariffs are going to increase inflation a little bit. Powell said he would have already cut rates if it wasn't for the tariffs. And President Trump has come out overnight and on social media massively attacked Jerome Powell, saying he's too late, that he's no good at his job, that he should be fired, even though he can't fire him. They plan to name a successor to try and shove him out of the way. But from all, and from all sort of indications, Powell won't step aside, and nor should he, because the entire point of having an independent reserve bank or central bank is, when you've got a maniac in power, to be able to say no, and they cannot be fired. So they've looked into the legalities of that and walked away from it. But, obviously these sorts of things don't generally stop President Trump from making outlandish comments. So, another day, another Twitter spat, essentially, for the president. And again, it's the standing of the office, getting a little bit political now, but the standing of the office has taken a significant hit with Trump in power. It's, the tactics that are being used are, have never really been seen before, and maybe it won't be seen again. So as you can see, everything was fairly green overnight. Chip stocks were buoyed by the fact that they're loosening the rules on chip exports to China, and in a recent trade agreement, and I say agreement in inverted commas there. So I think what they've essentially done behind closed doors is swap rare earths for more chips. The Chinese are getting the chips anyway. Basically, they've been caught twice now buying them via Saudi Arabia and via Singapore, I believe. And so it's not like they're not getting the chips. If you go back to the chip wars of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, the Russians had an entire system on semiconductors, trying to copy the chips, etc., and reverse engineer. This is very much a case of national security. Whoever is the leader in this space in AI, and which obviously needs these chips, is going to very much dominate in any sort of cyber war, militarily moving forward. So don't underestimate what this means to governments across the world, because they all regard it as a massive national security issue. To give you a historical example, missiles in Vietnam had an accuracy of about 10% since when semiconductors were invented and put into the guidance systems for missiles beyond that point into Desert Storm. that flipped on its head to the accuracy being 90%. So, these are the sorts of things from a military point of view that make a huge difference. But also everything's online now, everything's digital from a cybersecurity point of view as well. If the America needs to remain the leader there, which is why they're being so protective of it all. So that was really the corporate news. And look, CrowdStrike jumped as well last night. So CrowdStrike's one of the biggest cybersecurity firms in the world. And it just basically is essentially what I was just talking about. Got upgraded on the fact that cybersecurity driven for AI related demand is going to be significantly higher over the coming years. And I would definitely agree with that. It's something we've looked at for the global alpha, and it is still on our radar for now. But obviously, with that economic number being 147,000, that obviously helps some of the growth companies. And you can sort of see there was a few growth and service companies that were up quite significantly overnight. Tesla remains stable, which is a good result for them, considering the CEO has been threatened to be deported this year. In the last 24 hours. So that story may have now sort of disappeared overall. Commodity space, silver is knocking on the door of those 15-year highs again. European session seems to be when the buying comes in. It's usually around about that 7 p.m. mark, 6 p.m. mark. We've noticed copper got a little bit hit as the US dollar strengthened and yields went up. And I would expect that to sort of rebound, but it's had a pretty solid week this week. It's down only 0.5%, but it's just hovering and building up steam underneath those record highs at 520. I wouldn't expect it to fail here, but look, I've been wrong about copper a number of times before. Obviously, iron ore continues to rally, up about nearly 3% for the week now, up 1.5% yesterday. Coal is on a bit of a heater, and we saw coal stocks on the ASX rally significantly yesterday. They were the leaders. They're up around about 10%, as well as lithium as well. Obviously, HLIT there is the lithium ETF. It gained another 1.5% overnight. Uranium having a softer than usual week. Bitcoin remaining fairly buoyant. One thing we are monitoring at the moment is the ability for stocks to go 24 hours on the Solana blockchain has been launched by someone. And that is something, with Trump being so pro-crypto and possibly sees it as a money-making venture towards the end of his presidency, and the blockchain technology being used more and more in real-life applications, we are looking at launching, and we've done the numbers on an enhanced growth strategy in the structured product space for a basket of crypto over the next couple of years. So if you've got any interest in that, just email us from the website. I've got the new calendar for next week now. Nothing obviously on Monday in terms of corporate news. Really thin overall for corporate news in the next over the next week or so. Yet again, but one thing that we're going to have to watch is the BRICS Summit on Monday the 7th. So that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which is now expanded to about 30 other nations that tend to go to the meeting. Given that we've got the FOMC minutes and Trump's deadline on Wednesday the 9th, you would expect some posturing and chest beating from the BRICS Summit overall. It'll be Russia and China's chance to flex their muscles a little bit into those deadlines and maybe, play Trump at his own game a little bit. So for those of you context on BRICS, they want to move back to more of a gold standard and move away from the US dollar and de-dollarize. US dollar obviously has had its worst start to the year since like the 70s. So, and I would expect it to keep going, because with Trump's big, beautiful bill, literally in the last 20 minutes being passed, the US debt's going to get worse. And I don't know about you guys. I know the only thing holding the US dollar up at the moment is the fact that their military is so strong, because their national books are an absolute disaster now, and we will see a further $5 trillion added to that debt, which stands at $37 trillion, will lead to further credit downgrades potentially as soon as the next couple of months, I would expect, because with that debt getting worse. So Trump's saying we'll solve it by growth, but with economic numbers softening in the immediate term, it's not going to look great. It'll be a quiet one on the ASX today, I would imagine, and probably Monday as well. And we'll start to heat up leading into those deadlines on the Wednesday. And then I think the following week we will start to see some of the major banks report earnings. Have a great day and have a great weekend. And we will speak next week.
General advice, warning and disclaimer. Opinions, thoughts, research, recommendations and content presented are general advice only. They do not take into account your specific circumstances. Please consult a financial professional before making any investment decisions. For further information on our disclaimers and general advice, please see our website and our PDS.